and my fellow students of Jindal School of Journalism and Communication. I'd like to take this opportunity to throw some light on the inspiring endeavors taken up by Mr. Arjun. Being a multiple award-winning media professional, he's won numerous national and international awards. He is also the founder of the very famous Delhipedia, a location-based video and experimental guide for Delhi. With the beaming experience of nearly 2 decades, at a young age, Mr. Pandey has been running 24 Frames Films Limited for the last 17 years, during which he has had worked on 7 campaigns that have changed various laws in India, 5 on protecting wildlife and Indian environment, and 2 on health. Being an avid filmmaker, Mr. Arjun's films have been played out individually in 170 plus countries, globally from BBC, Al Jazeera, Doordarshan, and NDTV in India. In addition to directing, producing, filmmaking, he has also been on the various government panels of industries like International Film Festival Goa and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. He is currently curating and growing the media and entertainment market as a part of Global Exhibition of Services in Delhi. He was also the member of National Committee on Media and Entertainment for CII. Mr. Arjun also volunteers as the head of Live to Love India Foundation in Ladakh. We are glad to have you amongst us here, sir. I would like to welcome him on the podium as he would now speak upon using of media for building social change. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me the chance to actually speak with you. I get really excited to come and talk to the next generation of people who will build the media in the future. So it comes into your hands. Could I get a quick show of hands in terms of areas of interest? Who all are interested in news and television, like news and current affairs? 2, 4, 5. Fiction, feature films, and soaps. All right, that's the vast majority. Great. Writing, blogging, travel. Okay. Fiction, writing, books. All right. Anyone who wants to anchor programs? All right. Any other interests? Sports journalism. Sorry. Okay. PR. And did I leave anything? Event management, the like. Great. So you guys in the middle have a lot of overlapping interests. So one of the things which I wanted to start with was a saying by Mark Twain, and he said, "Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect." It's very important, and I think the media has traditionally held that. The fourth estate, a powerful media keeps the government in check. A powerful media keeps industry lobbies in check. Powerful media makes sure that the voiceless have a voice. So it's very important for the media to have that voice, be it in any sphere. Akshay Kumar's film Toilet Ek Prem Katha just came out. So for those of you fiction, future directors and producers, it's interesting. He's taken a very relevant social topic and he's built a film around it. It's also interesting to see that if you were to actually just build a fiction narrative without layering the story now with things that are of interest or importance to people in society today, it will not work. So you're seeing more and more films. They all touch upon a social issue. They touch upon things around our daily lives. So, it's that social change. They're also trying to impact social change. My journey and transition in this is interesting. So I'm going to cover 4 broad areas today. I'm going to speak about my work. I'm going to talk about how stories and telling stories can bring about a change. I've been fortunate to be able to do so. I'm going to talk about independent publishing and the future of where things are heading. And finally, I'm going to talk about Delhipedia, my project of passion and love. And it sort of all builds in and links in. As Bill Gates had once said, sorry, not Bill Gates, Steve Jobs had once said, you can only join the dots when you look back. And it's an interesting thing. Everything that I've done sort of joins the dots back to who I am today. My journey in filmmaking or storytelling started some 38 years ago. I was born in a family of filmmakers. And with that, very early on, all the family holidays were extended shoots. We would be in national parks. I remember as a child playing in Madhuri Dixit's lap. She was in a shoot in the studio. You had the edit of Hum Log, Jaspal Bhatti's Ulta Pulta. So all these guys were just there. And as a child, you grew up in this atmosphere. So, it's just like different. There was nothing much that I could do beyond storytelling and filmmaking. My father was one of the first few environmental filmmakers, documentary filmmakers in the country. He spoke about environmentally related issues some 40 years ago. Now, no one did that in India. In fact, the government half the time would tell him, why don't you guys just back down? India is a developing country. We need to feed our billions and, millions, hundreds of millions. So let's not even get into environment. We can just cut our trees, pollute our rivers, feed all of us food pesticide laden. And the problem is it comes back to us, right? So it has. But way back then, he spoke about that. My mother was one of the first few women news producers in the country, Arjun and Pandey. She started with Doordarshan. She is Sikh, so I enjoyed the parentage of two religions. My mother was Sikh, my father is Sikh, father was Hindu. So in 1984, she was reporting for the government back then, the side of the majority. And you had the Sikh, the Operation Blue Star that took place. Very painful period for her. It's post that she couldn't continue doing that. So she quit. She went on to join the UN in different roles with UNICEF and WHO. My brother he's just left NDTV for a very interesting new news format. He's been there for 20 years. Some of his stories have built change in getting illegal mining banned to rescuing children being sold off into human trafficking networks. So that's the sort of background that I come in from. But it's interesting, my life changed when my daughter was born. So in 2010, Gayatri, she's now 7, was born. And when I held her in my hands, I was like, oh my God, this baby, she's so perfect. And this world around her, it's not perfect. So I must try and do something to make a change for that. But how do I do that? This is huge. So I figured, I was like, okay, let me tell stories. This is what I can do. Let me tell stories and get more people to tell good stories. And, maybe together we can build a change. When I was a child, we only had one television channel. Now, many of you would not understand that. When you were born is when cable television started coming into the country. There was one TV channel. On Sundays, we would have, there'd be no programming. Maybe at 5 in the evening, the television would start. We would wait for that. Ramayan started and the entire country came to a standstill on Sunday morning. No one went out of their house. Like 10 to 11, that was a sacred period. We all just sat in. So from that, we got cable television. And suddenly I was exposed to some of the most interesting shows on TV. We had Baywatch. You had Pamela Anderson running around the beaches of California. And it spoke to us of a lifestyle of disposable morality, a lifestyle of consumerism, a lifestyle that said, hey, you should wake up to a hangover at 10 or 11 in the morning. But it's interesting. We were being told and sold one type of story. What was happening with friends in the US? Same time. They were waking up to yoga and meditation at 6. Me and my friends were waking up to hangovers at 10. So, stories. Stories that we get told define who we are. Now, some of this predates the time when you guys are just born, right? So this is what you've been born into. You've been born into media, which is just forcing down consumerism in a way down your throats. And you have to sort of first get an understanding that it exists and then sort of work towards changing it if you wanted to. So there's stories that sort of make you aware. You've all heard of farmer suicides, right? Any thoughts on why they happen? Anyone? Debts. Why are they in debt? failed crops, okay. So in the 1950s and 60s in India, we were sold a story of moving to something called the Green Revolution, commercial mechanized farming. Now, what's interesting is India has marginal farmers. 80% of the farmers in India have land holdings under 2 acres. Some of them would have like 1,000 meters. This means that they need to grow enough to sustain their livelihoods for a whole family from 1,000 meters up to 2 acres, and then be able to commercially sell beyond that. Any idea how much a farmer earns from 1 acre of land in India on average? Anyone? So this is 12 months. He works day and night. He puts in input for seed, fertilizer, pesticides. And at the end of the year, if he is lucky, he will pull out 50,000 rupees per acre. Most farmers in India are marginalized, small farmers under 2 acres. So the maximum income a farmer can make is 1 lakh. If everything goes well, if the rainfall is good, if nothing destroys his crops, then he gets 1 lakh. But if you really unravel this, so I think in 2011 or so, I was asked by BBC to do a documentary on farmer suicides. And I took the commission, and normally I don't like to do films that are negative on India. But then I said, if I don't, someone else will. And maybe I can try and look at this from a different way. So I went to Andhra Pradesh, and we looked at farmers. And Andhra Pradesh used to be number 1 in farmer suicides. Maharashtra now is number 1. So Andhra is number 2 now. Because they went back and figured out a way on how you can reduce farmer suicides. So they went back to traditional Indian farming. And guess what they found? 3 things: pesticides, fertilizers, and genetically modified seeds. These 3 things cause more than 50% of the cost of agriculture. We had farms that we went to on 100 square meters where farmers were able to grow enough crop. This is Narsiva. This is him growing on 100 square meters of land. 14 varieties of crop going back to traditional Indian farming, which predates organic farming. Trust me, before 1950, India only did organic farming, right? You had gobar, that's what you used. If you wanted pesticide, you used neem. And guess what? The world is coming back to it. Everyone wants to come back to organic farming, which is traditional Indian farming. And it saves the farmer 50% of the money. Now, if it cost him 50,000 a year to go and to do agriculture, now it costs him 25. His yield, 50,000. On this 100 meters, they were able to pull out 4,000 to 5,000 rupees a month, more than what they could get out of an acre. Now, stories like that, if they reached the farmers in Maharashtra, or if they reach other farmers that don't know of this, the potential is maybe 1 farmer less commits suicide. Now that's 1 family, 4 or 5 people, a wife, kids, parents, all of them depending on that 1 person or that 1 income. So is that a cause that is worth taking up? And you can do that in every separate field. If you wanted to write blogs about it, you wanted to go and visit nearby farms, where's your produce coming from, what you eat? Has anyone done a story on that? Is it chemically laden? Are you eating organic? Are you eating healthy? What is that doing to you? And I come back to milk and something I was researching on milk recently. It is horrifying. I mean, I've been told not to do the docu on that, but if anyone wants to, that's a huge challenge. Huge challenge that faces the country. Stories also give a voice to the voiceless. I was fortunate to be part of these campaigns. My uncle did a film on the whale sharks in India, and no one knew that the whale sharks existed in India. Australia had 462, all satellite tagged. You could see them on like a map, and you could say, hey, this is swimming here, this is swimming here. We were killing 1,200 a year at that time. We are not a whaling nation. We don't eat whale meat. So why were we doing it? So middlemen would come in from places like Hong Kong and Taiwan, where shark fin soup is a big novelty, and they would get these shark fins. And whale sharks are like completely harmless. They do nothing. You can swim with them, and they're peaceful. The gentle giants of the sea. So this is a bit graphic, but I'm going to play this out for you.
Little boy, I had traveled from creatures swimming along our ship throughout the journey. Nearly 40 years after the crossing, the faint memory of these massive creatures in the warm waters of the Arabian Sea lured me to look for them once again. We traveled all along the Gujarat shore in all seasons for 3 years, combing the waters, asking local fisherfolk about this fish. We finally found them in a small fishing village on the Swarashtra coast. Only this time, these creatures imprinted in my memory were not frolicking in the sea. They were being hunted. Scores of whale sharks lay on the beach, hauled in to be slaughtered. But for the local people, nothing seemed amiss. For them, it was just another catch.
Whale shark hunting has become a rampant practice here. Several fishermen have mastered the skill of capturing this mammoth fish. The most basic equipment is used for this: an iron hook, nylon rope, and a couple of barrels used as buoys.
With heavy hearts, we filmed the harpooning of one of the hundreds of whale sharks that are killed on the western coast of India every year. Six kilometers into the sea, we waited for hours, captive in a small open boat, scorched by the relentless summer sun. A little past noon, a whale shark was spotted. Several boats closed in on the find.
The rules of the hunt are simple. The first boat to the catch claims it. The diving fish is constantly pulled upwards by the floating barrels. Exhausted, the whale shark gives up the fight and eventually floats to the surface.
On our way back, we saw several other whale sharks being towed back. The size of the whale sharks caught varies from 15-foot juveniles to 35-foot giants. Back on shore, we found more beached whale sharks, magnificent creatures of the deep, aground. Strangely, most fishermen hire other people to cut up their whale shark catch. The mindless slaughter perhaps goes against the grain. But the massacre continues regardless.
In the last 5 years, exporters along India's western coast have caught on to the demand for whale shark meat and fins in parts of Southeast Asia. Whale shark meat is sold for a ridiculous 1 rupee or 2 cents for a kilogram. Exporters get about 40 times the amount they pay to the fishermen. The fishermen usually keep the liver to extract the oil themselves. The liver accounts for roughly 10% of the total weight. Removed from the carcass, the liver is cut up and carried home by these men. Cut into strips in their backyards, the liver is put into metal barrels and left in the sun. Amazingly, there is no process required to extract the oil. Left in the barrels, over time, the liver melts into oil. This oil was originally used by fishermen to waterproof boats, and sometimes sold at a very low price to shoe polish manufacturers. Today, despite alternative waterproofing material being available, this liver oil is still used for waterproofing boats and is sold for less than $1 a litre. It is important to examine whether the commercial returns of this marine product is worth putting the species in danger. Is it crucial to the livelihood of the fishermen that hunt it? The children that play on the floating carcasses of these gigantic ocean creatures may never realize that they have been witness to the waste of an extraordinary life form.
So before this film came out, when we went to the Gujarat government and we said, you have whale sharks, you need to protect them. And they're like, there are no whale sharks in Gujarat. So they said, okay, go away. We went and we made the film. The film went and got international attention. It won the Green Oscar. The minute it did that, it got the national award. The minute it did that, the policymakers sat up and said, okay, let's put it under the protected species. Now, what's interesting is we also took this internationally as part of a campaign. We took it to CITES. CITES is the nodal body that looks at endangered species globally. So CITES passed a law protecting the whale sharks globally. In India, the whale sharks have equal protection as the tiger, and globally CITES has given it protection as well. This is from one film. Now, as a campaign, it's 3 to 5 years of your life. Maybe it's not going to net you a huge amount of money, but it gives you a lot of peace when you go to sleep at night. So 5 campaigns on environment and wildlife. Twice on the elephant, once on whale sharks, once on vultures, and once on something called the horseshoe crabs. In addition to that, I've done 2 campaigns on anti-tobacco, the clean air law. In restaurants, you can't smoke anymore. So I'm pro-choice, anyone who wants to, please do. But the workers that work in restaurants, they're there. They come from like very basic, humble backgrounds. And back in the time when you could, there'd be so much smoke there that forget the smoker. The guy in the restaurant would get something happening to his body. I mean, all those funky things that could potentially happen, they would get that. So I think there are stories that can be a voice for the voiceless. People who do not have the power, the authority to stand up against a majority or a stronger force. And you as communicators of tomorrow have that. So when you do, always try and put that as a filter or a layer when you're studying a story, anything that you're wanting to do. Is there a cause? Look at all sides of the story. It's essential to do that. But not all stories need to be, dark and depressing in that way. You could have stories that inspire as well. Part of Delhipedia, we covered the story of Lakshman Rao. Now, Lakshman Rao sells chai at ITO.
तो ये समीप है, हम लोग लंच में यहाँ से निकलते थे, तो उसी समय हमने राव साहब को यहाँ पे तब परिचय हुआ कि जब से हमने इनसे पहली बार चाय पी। उसके बाद फिर हमको मालूम चला कि राव साहब साहित्यकार हैं और ये पुस्तकें लिख रहे हैं।
अब तक मैंने 24 पुस्तकें लिखी हुई है और 12 पुस्तकें प्रकाशित हुई है और 6 पुस्तकें रीप्रिंट हो चुकी है। तो ये मेरा साहित्यिक जीवन यहाँ तक चला आ रहा है। एक पेड़ के नीचे बैठकर पान बीड़ी सिगरेट बेचने लगा और पान बीड़ी सिगरेट बेचते हुए दरियागंज से दिल्ली गेट से संडे रवि को मैं पुस्तकें खरीदता रहा और पढ़ता रहा। इस तरह से मैंने अपनी हिंदी भाषा सुधारने का प्रयास किया। 2 पुस्तकें लेकर फिर मैं दरियागंज में गया, प्रकाशक को कहा मैं पुस्तक प्रकाशित करना चाहता हूँ। किसी ने कहा पैसे लगते, कई कारण बताए, पर एक प्रकाशक ने मुझे कहा गेट आउट, आप नहीं जानते ये क्या है, आप बहुत छोटे हो, अभी ज़रा पढ़ो। फिर मैंने अपने पैसे इकट्ठा किए और 1979 में मेरी पहली पुस्तक प्रकाशित हुई, नई दुनिया की नई कहानी, और अपनी पान की दुकान पर रखकर मैं इसे बेचने लगा। उन्हीं दिनों 81 में मेरे जीवन के बारे में एक आर्टिकल प्रकाशित हुआ टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में। 27 मई 1984 को मैं 3 मूर्ति भवन में गया और वहाँ मेरी श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी जी से मुलाकात हुई। जब लोग पूछते थे व्हाट इज योर क्वालिफिकेशन, तब मुझे लगा कि मैंने पढ़ना भी चाहिए, तो मैंने पत्राचार विद्यालय से 11वीं 12वीं की, फिर मैंने दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से BA किया और अभी मेरी उम्र 62 वर्ष की है। अभी भी मैं MA कर रहा हूँ हिंदी लिटरेचर से। अभी इस समय मैं सेकेंड ईयर में हूँ। व्यक्तिगत घटनाओं पर मैंने लिखा हुआ, लोगों के जीवन पर, समाज पर, घटनाओं पर, राजनीतिक दृष्टिकोण पर। तो जो जो सच्चाई होती है उस पर मैं अपना विश्लेषण करता हूँ, अपने विचार व्यक्त करता हूँ।
समय के साथ साथ जो इन्होंने को चेंज किया, अभी जैसे मैं कि लेटेस्ट बुक पढ़ रहा था, इन्होंने बिल्कुल समय के साथ साथ अपनी थिंकिंग को चेंज किया।
और पुस्तकें यहाँ से बिक रही है, कैसे ऑर्डर्स भी आते हैं, पर इससे घर नहीं चलता है। 10-20 हज़ार रुपये मुझे पुस्तकों से मिलते हैं, नेट पर भी मेरी पुस्तकें बिक रही है, पर इससे घर नहीं चलता। इसलिए मैं ये चाय का काम कर रहा हूँ। मेरा अपना पब्लिकेशन है और ये मेरा काम चल रहा है, लेकिन जो जिज्ञासा था मेरी साहित्यकार बनना की, वो मेरी पूरी हो रही है और इसी में मुझे सुख है, शांति है। हिंदी सबसे ज़्यादा बिक रही है, हिंदी के समाचार पत्र सबसे ज़्यादा लोग पढ़ रहे हैं, हिंदी सब कुछ सब बोल लेते हैं और हिंदी की पुस्तकें भी बिक रही है। परंतु लोग कहते नहीं अंग्रेजी बहुत अच्छी बिकती है, नहीं, दे वांट टू कैरी दैट इंग्लिश, दे आर कैरिंग दैट मैगजीन्स एंड न्यूज़पेपर, दे वांट टू शो दैट आई एम इंग्लिश में, बट दे कैनॉट अंडरस्टैंड दैट इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज इन द डीप वे। क्योंकि लोग पढ़ते ही नहीं हैं, लोगों को पढ़ना ही नहीं आता, क्या पढ़ना है, उसमें क्या पेजेस, कौन से पेजेस काम के, क्या पढ़ना है, क्या आर्टिकल है। लोग अपने विचारों को प्रकट करने के पहले ही महान साहित्यकार बनने का प्रयास करते हैं, वो असंभव है। पहले समर्पित हो जाइए, अध्ययन करिए, पढ़िए, पुस्तक कैसी छपती है, कैसी लिखी जाती है, और बेचना भी है। जब तक स्वयं लेखक नहीं बेचता है, लेखक नहीं बन सकता। लेखक की ज़िंदगी या उसका लेखक का जन्म ही 50 साल के बाद है और उसकी ज़िंदगी उसके मरने के बाद है। अगर इस बात को कोई समझता है तो इसे करे वो, नहीं तो छोड़ दे।
If you like this video, do like.
So, Lakshman Rao, he sells on Amazon. But I think what's inspiring for me in that story is, he goes to Daryaganj and takes his book and the guy like, get out, yaar, tum chai wale ho, tum kya karoge? He does not give up, he does not sell short on his dream. So a guy selling tea on the footpath of ITO can write 24, now 25 books. Why can't you? There are stories that shake things up as well. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but so with the Jessica Lal case, she was in a way not able to get justice in what again, it was a voice against a majority or someone who was more powerful. But the people woke up. NDTV as a news channel heralded this. It took this up, championed this campaign, and everyone got involved. It became such a large campaign that finally, even that she was no more, she was able to get justice for herself. So news, current affairs has that power. That power can be misused a lot, and there's a fine line. So you've got to be very careful. You cannot go into rants like Arnab at fill 3 hours with it. It's got to be incisive. It's got to have both sides of a story, both news and current affairs. Always remember that. Brings us to India and today. India has 857 television channels. About 200 more are currently in licensing. That's 1,000 television channels. 450 of them are news channels. How many of you really watch television? Show of hands. How many of you watch Netflix? How many of you on YouTube? Okay, so the majority sits on YouTube and Netflix. Between Amazon, Netflix, YouTube, Hotstar, any of them, ALT, there's about 40 OTT players in the country today. And I think there's an overload of stories. So you tend to switch off. When I started making television programs in like the early 2000s, in a half an hour show, I would have 3 stories of 8 minutes each. Last year we put out a series on Doordarshan, on Discovery, it's still there. It's called India My Way. We traveled all 29 states and we looked for stories. I had 8 stories of 3 minutes. So the attention span in 17 years from 8 minutes a story came down to 3 minutes a story. And it didn't stop there. Each 3 minute story had layers in it. So I had to find 2 to 3 layers instead of flipping every minute. This is the attention span in India. In the US, Vine works, 6-second ads work. I think India still we need 10, 20, 30 seconds. Facebook counts a video at 3 seconds. You know, so if you see 3 seconds of video, they're like, done, you've seen the video. Why? Because in the US, the attention span is 4 seconds. How are you going to get your viewer in that? So one is selling things that will work. Second is selling consistently solid, good stories. Then they'll come back to you because they know, hey, these guys are good. And of course, you follow the trend of what is needed with that, right?